If you are looking at your sales numbers and you are trying to figure out how to double them, this episode's for you. I am literally saying when we talk about increasing the lifetime value of our client, we are trying to figure out how we can have them pay us more, how they can work with us more. The really encouraging thing is that if you increase these areas, actions times profit times effectiveness, if you can increase them by 26%, each of those categories, that equals doubling your business.
Welcome to another episode of Sippin Matcha and helping you make more sales, where we answer your sales questions and give some great advice from our resident matcha drinker and sales expert, Brooke. As always, we invite you to jump into the conversation, and you can do that by submitting your own question at buildingmomentum.info/matcha. Let's bring Brooke in and check in. I know we are both just living in the excitement of our son's 6th grade upper school theatrical debut last night.
Yes, 50 Nifties. Is that what it was called?
I think it was Nifty 50s.
Oh, no, Nifty 50s. Yes.
Yes, so our youngest daughter especially liked it. She was dancing along to songs like Teenager in Love and that. So it was fun to see. It reminded me of
being a teenager in love?
No, that's not what I was thinking about. Yes, for those of you listening and not seeing Brooke's hand gestures, she has an agreement with lead pastor at our church, who we went to Bible college together with, that if an ex-girlfriend ever shows up,
this is what he does.
Yep, he claps and points. And how many times has that happened?
It's not, but they are out there. They just don't go to our church. So.
And on that note, let's shift into today's question.
Ooh, good
Rather than, I was going to say earlier that I was reminded of my 7th grade school musical, which was used 50s and 60s music, but I think it was a version of The Prince and the Pauper. So I was a game show host, and my best friends who lived down the street were twins, so they were the Prince and the Pauper. But
we did something like the 50s in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and I had a solo. I sang Johnny Angel.
That's good. I also will go down that road. Let's talk about today's question today, and that is, how can I double my sales in 2026? And really,
yes,
this is an evergreen thing. So whether it's 2026 or 2040, there's going to be people out there that are thinking, how can I my sales?
And I love this question. So when I was in sales, we're in sales now in regards with our business, and I help people a lot as a sales coach. But when I was in corporate sales for 20 plus years and doing all sorts of other sales, this is something that we had to do on a regular basis. What we're going to talk about today is just a simple formula. And this is something that is pretty basic. It's not rocket science, but it's something that either you know or you don't know, and it's easy to forget and not focus on it. And so I'm really appreciate this question. And so I'm excited to be able to talk about it, because there are things that we can do. And as they're listening to this episode, they can start to apply today, and that's going to start moving their business forward. And they really can double their sales in 2026.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, this is a very simple thing. So riding a bike is relatively simple. There aren't a lot of parts to it. So you get a little momentum, you keep your balance, you look ahead, not at your front tire, and before too long, you're off and running. But if somebody doesn't have any experience riding a bike or anything like that, and then all of a sudden you're dropped on one that's moving, it's difficult. And so sometimes if people, some of this is sort of assumed and it's baked in, but they never say it out loud. And so sometimes when people dive into sales, they don't quite really understand this formula and how it works. And it's like jumping on a bike that's moving and you don't know how to actually make it work.
Yeah. When I was a sales specialist, that was one of my roles when I was in corporate. I was coming into communities that were usually struggling. And so we needed to turn it around pretty quickly. And they were struggling in regards to their census, in regards to having residents moving in. And this is literally the formula that you would start to do. And so it's not that it's a secret, but people just don't really focus on it and they don't really understand the power of it. And so I'm excited we get to talk about it today.
Yeah, so in your coaching, you refer to this as the sales success formula. And
Yes.
if you have math anxiety, don't get too, it's not very complicated. But,
No, it's not.
But Brooke, give us the sales success formula.
So it's actions times profit times effectiveness equals sales success. There's three parts: actions, profit, and effectiveness.
Great. And at the end of the episode, we're going to come back and do the little bit of math, very basic math, and show you how this formula can actually double your sales and show it. So let's talk about the different parts of this. The first part is actions. What do you mean by that?
So when I say actions, and this formula works for any type of sales, whatever company you're in. But today we're talking specifically from the angle of professional services, having to talk to people in order to make a sale. So when I'm talking about actions, I'm talking about sales generating activities. I am not talking about marketing. Those are very important, but that's not what we're saying when we're talking about the actions that we need to be able to increase. So that's your sales conversations, your one-on-one proposals, your one-on-one emails. Those are the main pieces that we're looking at. And we're trying to figure out, how many do you actually do in a week, in a month, in a quarter? And then we try to figure out, how do we do more of those?
Yeah, and I was just thinking, we did an episode not too long ago that was on, like, do I have a marketing or a sales problem? And you talk a little bit more in depth about the difference between marketing and sales. Obviously, you need people need to know you exist. People need marketing is important to have these sales conversations and activities, but they're not exactly the same.
No. We're really talking about, what do we do after we have the lead? These are the three steps that we're working on today for this part of the conversation.
All right, so upping those things, is there anything else that we need to know with regards to actions?
Oh, we could spend a whole episode on that, but that is just the general view of what we're talking about in regards to actions. And we don't want to get it confused with the marketing. So it's literally sales conversations, the direct proposals, the direct emails, where you're doing one-to-one, or you're talking to a company and it's you to that company and that board. But it's not this mass marketing effort.
Okay, so the first part is actions, and we're talking sales actions here. Brooke defined that and that. The second piece then, I think, was profit, right? Actions times profit.
Yes. And so this is increasing the lifetime value of your client. And almost every time when I am sharing this with my clients, they immediately start saying, oh, I do that. Like, I can offer them this, and then we might add another meeting, and I'm always adding value to them. And that is not what I am talking about. I am literally saying, when we talk about increasing the lifetime value of our client, we are trying to figure out how we can have them pay us more, how they can work with us more. That might sound a little harsh. We're not saying we're doing that in a manipulative way, but that is literally what we're trying to figure out. What else can I offer them that would bring them value, but it also brings us value because they're paying us more? And so that looks, do we need to increase our prices? That looks like adding other services that they would need. That looks like, instead of just doing like a one-time project, moving to retainers. You can also do it on a different way, and you can start looking at, how do you decrease some of those expenses that you have? That can also increase the lifetime value of your client. So you're literally asking yourself, how can I get them to give me more money?
Yeah, and the reason, I mean, I think it's readily apparent why getting more money is a good thing typically in business, but it does help you increase your sales success, because if every customer is worth a little bit more, that really begins to make a difference. So we talked about actions, and we talked about profit, the last one, and I know you like all of these, but probably effectiveness is what gets you excited the most.
It does, because it actually will drive the other two a lot faster. And so effectiveness is, how effective are we in these things? So specifically, we're not talking about just sheer volume. A lot of times people will listen to the sales gurus, or they'll hear things online, or there'll be an advertisement or whatever, and they're going to teach you how you can do 100 cold DMs on LinkedIn or something along that line. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad strategy, but that is not what I am talking about. I am talking about, when we are having these conversations, when we are having these proposals, these follow-ups, how effective are we in them? Because if we are more effective in them, that drives everything up. So one of the things that you're looking at specifically when we talk about effectiveness would be looking at your whole sales process as a whole. And so the one question I ask my clients a lot is, can you look at and know exactly how many clients your potential clients you're working with? Can you know all of them? And can you also know exactly what their problem is and what their buying time frame is? Could you just grab any one of them out of your database and you would be able to know that information? If you don't, that's when you're starting to feel stuck. And that's what we're talking about for one of those pieces of helping things to be more effective. And then if that's not effective, then I know immediately, okay, then the conversations we're having are not leading us to be able to have these answers so that we can move things forward. So you're really looking at how effective are my conversations? How effective is my follow-up? How effective are my one-on-one emails when we're trying to move things forward? How effective are my proposals? You're looking at each step and you're looking at how effective you are in moving them to the next step. And if you're not, then that's going to cause a lot of problems and frustration, and you won't be able to double your sales.
All right. So that effectiveness.
Wasn't that positive?
That was, but just to reiterate what you said there, like a key mark on effectiveness is, do you know what problem each potential customer or each current customer has that you can solve, and then do you know their buying time frame for when they want to solve, or when they're prepared to solve that problem by making a purchase? And so that, I know in other episodes we've talked about buckets, and you talk about that a lot with 30 days, like 0 to 30 days, 30 to 60, 60 to 90 plus, and breaking it down like that. And if you can't do that, you may need to do some work. So I argue this all the time. Every conversation we have, we should know those two answers. And when I say problem, sometimes people are like, oh, yeah, I know it. No. Not the generic problem, not the surface problem, the problems that are going to drive them and motivate them to buy. And again, not in a manipulative way, but in a way for us to truly understand, can we help them or can we not? If we don't know that, we cannot move forward. It's not going to work. And so that you have to know those two pieces, and you have to be effective in being able to move them forward from that point on. And so if you don't have it, it's going to get really tough. All right. So the promise at the beginning was you're going to double our sales. So
yes.
This is, okay, actions, profit, effectiveness. Oh my goodness. I've got to spend the next 5 years figuring this out. Is there any hope for me?
Oh, there's so much hope. And it's like you tell someone, oh, it's only 3 steps. And then the 3 steps are like, that's my whole business. And that's not the intention, to overwhelm. The really encouraging thing is that if you increase these areas, actions times profit times effectiveness, if you can increase them by 26%, each of those categories, that equals doubling your business. So I'm not telling you to overhaul everything. But I am telling you, you need to be specific on what you're going to focus on and being able to improve that. But in order to break it down in the mathematical way, I am going to ask Dr. Greening to do that for me, please.
Right. So thank you. My doctorate was not in mathematics, so I'm going to make this very, very simple. So
I know, but I really try to put that in there everywhere I can, at the grocery store or at the coffee shop.
Yes. Thank you.
The rest of my life. That's my new goal.
Right. Yay. I'm so excited. So.
All right.
You said if we improve each of these areas 26%. So yes. Basically what that looks like is if you're currently having 4 sales calls, let's say a week, 26% would be roughly moving up to 5 sales calls. Okay, that seems doable. If your average customer or client spends $100 with you, you need to figure out a way to get them to spend $126 with you. And that.
Can you make it a little bit more complicated, though? Because a lot of times the people that we're working with, they're not necessarily spending $100. They may be like in higher packages. So what would it look like for a $5,000 package.
Oh, see, how about we do, this is where I'm not a math doctor. You needed to warn me ahead of time.
Sorry. You can do 5,000 or 10,000, but just to help people.
Okay, 10,000 would be 2,600. So then 5,000 would be 1,300. So then it would be 6,300. So
okay, great.
And that. But
good job.
That's the idea. And you can do that by adding a continuity package at the end of the package. You can do that by understanding really what their problem is. So then you're solving a bigger or more problems, all of those types of things. And then the last one is, it's a little bit more nebulous, but it's the effectiveness piece. And so if you can be 26% more effective in your conversations, in your proposals, and do all that. And the encouraging part here is when you improve that effectiveness piece, it helps you get to the 26% on the others. Because when you're having more effective conversations, you're going to be able to have more sales activities, because for those people that aren't ready to buy now, you're going to know, oh, they're going to buy in 2 weeks or in 2 months. And then you schedule that assignment for yourself and you call and you follow up and do all of those things. And when you understand their problems, like we just said, you can increase the amount that you're selling to them and all of those things. So,
yes.
You don't have to spend 5 years. It doesn't have to be a lot, but 26, like 1.26 times 1.26 times 1.26 takes you over 2, which means you doubled, you 2x'd your business. Now, you have had some successes that even outpace that as you've worked with clients. Why don't you tell a couple of their stories?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of 2 examples. One, I was just talking with them just recently, and they were sharing their testimony with me, and they were just stuck. It was hard for them to be making sales in regards to what was happening with their sales activity and all of that. And so we were able to work together for a month. And then during that time afterwards, then they did about $40,000 in sales, which is incredible to be able to turn that around. And then I had another gentleman that I was working with, and this I think is really interesting because he was in the sales profession. He was a B2B sales professional. And so that was his whole professional job. But he didn't really feel like anyone was really training him to know how to be able to do sales effectively. So I worked with him in my sales accelerator lab. And then a month later for him, he started meeting all of his quotas. He started being able to really enjoy commissions. It was a really neat turnaround for him to see, oh, I can do this. This is something that we can implement. But even people sometimes who have quote unquote sales jobs don't necessarily have this type of training to help them keep going. So I have people who come to me like incognito and they're wanting help. And then I have others, business owners who are coming and they're just wanting to they just know that they need to continue to grow their sales in their business.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you do this in your sales accelerator lab, and you have a group option, and then you also have a one-on-one option. And if you're like on the incognito, like maybe the one-on-one, or if you like your business demands, you got to have a specific schedule or those types of things, like that's a great opportunity. You also get to go a lot more in depth in the one-on-one because of the nature of it. But I was just going to highlight, we're getting ready to launch, hopefully very soon, and then on a regular basis, a webinar where you share a little bit more about this sales success formula and all sorts of other things on that will definitely help you double your revenue in your business. And so that's coming up. And we're going to say that you can go to buildingmomentum.info/webinar. And that will forward you to whatever appropriate website to get the information on Brooke's most upcoming webinar. We're looking even at next week if you happen to be one of our subscribers and do this right away. But what are you excited about for the webinar, Brooke?
I'm excited because every time we get to teach this, people just come to me and they're like, I had no idea. This is really helpful. And my whole goal is whether people work with me one-on-one or in group or look at a webinar, that they have things that they can apply immediately and go and do that day and be able to apply it that week, and that they start to see improvement. And that's what I get really excited about. And so ready to share it with the world. And I know my husband is excited for this to start because it's like being pregnant. It's a very long process. It's like 9 months.
Yeah. I would just say I haven't convinced you of using this as our marketing tagline or that, but I always say that if you want to make money, call Brooke. So that's what you do. So we'll see. And you guys can jump in on that. We're going to say goodbye, say thank you. Brooke's going to finish off her matcha, and I'm going to stop before we return to my teenage love stories. And
it was actually more college, but that's okay.
Yeah, let's farewell. Goodbye.
Bye.